Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of That's a Wrap. My name is Anthony Gentry, and I'm so glad you have joined me today. This is gonna be a big episode. I have I have a lot to talk about. I had to cut a few things, a few trailers. Um, right now I have two movies and three short films to review, and one, two, three, four trailers. Yes, I it was five. I cut it. And there could have been more, but I decided no. Let's save it for another day. But yeah, thank you for joining me. If you are not aware, that's a wrap. This is a movie review show. So every week I will come in and review the latest movie that comes out each and every week. And this week I have two movies: The Creator and the big movie, a sequel to a blockbuster film in a franchise that is beloved by millions. Of course, that is Paw Patrol 2. I'm just kidding. Saw X is the second movie. So yeah, let's get into it. But first, before we get into all those delicious movies, let's talk about the trailers. What do we have out this week? Well, the first trailer I want to talk about comes from Matthew Vaughn. He is a very eccentric, it's a good word to put it, director. Um, he's done the X-Men films, the Kingsman films. In the trailer, they say Twisted Mind. I still wouldn't call him twisted, but very energetic director. I call him that. Of course, I'm talking about Argylle. For those of you who aren't aware, it looks like and I'm just going based off the trailer too. This movie is a sort of like Stranger Than Fiction esque sort of movie, but with spies and espionage. It's about this writer who like has a series of spy books called Argylle, and she has writer's block for her latest book, and she doesn't know how to finish it. Well, it turns out what she's writing is coming true in real life. And so all these bad guys in the world want her to finish her book so they know what to do next and what's going to happen. So she becomes a target, and then Sam Rockwell takes her under her wing, and she is just carrying a cat in a bag, and she has no idea what to do. And now she's thrust into this world of espionage and action, and Henry Cavill and John Cena. Funny enough, um, but this trailer, just like every other Matthew Vaughn movie, it brought the energy, the action, the dynamic action, and the humor that you get with a lot of his movies, like Kick Ass or Kingsman. Um, so yeah, it was very action packed. It didn't really give me a lot of the plot, other than what I just told you, that Stranger Than Fiction vibes. Which, if you haven't seen, go see it. It's a great movie. Um, but yeah, I thought it was a really cool trailer. I'm interested to see where it goes. It looks like it's going to be like a franchise setup. One of the things that does confuse me is Henry Cavill's character, because he plays Argyle. And in the trailer, they say he's Agent Argyle, but it looks like he's the villain in the movie. So I'm not entirely sure what his role is. I'm sure that'll be revealed, but that's the only thing that really confused me about this trailer. But other than that, I think it looks pretty good. That comes out February 2nd. Looking forward to it. Our next trailer. Let's talk about, so we know we're in October. It's time to get into the holiday vibes. But before we get to Halloween, let's get to Thanksgiving. And that is the title of the movie. It's called Thanksgiving. From what I know, this is based off a fake trailer that played during Grindhouse, which was a Mod Podge of one Quentin Tarantino movie, one Robert Rodriguez movie, and they played a bunch of like fake trailers in between to give homage to a Grindhouse type of double feature that you'd see back in the day in like a drive-in theater. And so this stemmed from that, and it is a horror like slasher movie, but set during Thanksgiving. And in this town that like worships Thanksgiving, and that's their whole thing, is that they love Thanksgiving. And like at first glance, you can just write it off. It's like a horror movie about Thanksgiving that sounds very stupid. It sounds very dumb. But this trailer knew that. Or I guess it seems like the movie knows that. And it feels so campy. Like all of the weapons that he's using to kill people are Thanksgiving centric weapons, except for the first one. That was an axe. I do not count that, even though they say in the trailer, oh, it's all Thanksgiving weapons. But yeah, it seems like the perfect sense of campy, but also like self-serious. It has like Scream vibes with a group of teenagers who are being targeted by this mysterious mass killer. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, it just looks very interesting. I don't know what else to say because the trailer really just gave you a lot of kills. I am worried that they gave us the best in the trailer because it was very like gore centric. It gave us a lot of kills, especially the ear one if you've seen the trailer. But yeah, I hope they didn't give away all the good stuff. But I went from not looking forward to this at all to having it not high on my list of things to see, but openly optimistic. That I'll say that. I'm optimistic about it. That comes out November 17th. Check out my review of it if I get to it. We'll see. I think there's something else on the calendar then, but I'll see what I can do. All right. The next trailer that I want to talk about is another holiday movie-centric trailer that takes the holiday and turns it on its head. No, it's not Violent Night. It's Silent Night. This movie comes from John Woo, who has done Face Off, Mission Impossible 2, a lot of other like big action movies. And he is a very interesting director. Not John Wick. Face Off is very good. It's very entertaining. It's very schlocky and campy. Mission Impossible is the opposite of that, and that doesn't work for me. Whereas Face Off really worked for me. And Silent Night, to my delight, is more in the camp of Face Off. It is about a man who cannot speak, who was involved in a drive-by shooting that killed his wife and his kid, and they like shot his neck to where it probably like destroyed his voice box, so he cannot say a word. So it is a silent action movie set during Christmas time, where he is getting revenge on all the people who were involved in that shooting, and it looks so like high stakes, so much tension. It looks insane, like utterly insane. I am so down for these Christmas action movies. Like I mentioned, Violent Night that came out last year. I loved that movie. That movie was so good. So I'm really hoping this is like that. There were some Home Alone vibes in the trailer with some traps that they were having. So if it's anything like the trailer, I'm hoping they bring it. It looks so over the top, but just in the best way. I'm just down for it. That comes out December 1st, so just in time for Christmas. Some cozy vibes while watching some people get blown up. But yeah, looking forward to that. The last trailer that I want to talk about is not over the top, nor is it a holiday setting, but it is probably the most interesting trailer here, and that is Priscilla. For those of you who don't know, this is a Sofia Coppola movie about Priscilla Presley and the relationship between her and Elvis. And so we got the Elvis movie last year, which I liked. I thought it was very good. It was very eccentric. And this one, it turns it on its head, and it says, okay, instead of looking at Elvis and his life, let's look at Priscilla. And if anyone knows even the smallest thing about that relationship, it is very odd, to say the least. They met when Elvis, I think, was in his 20s, maybe like 25, 24. And Priscilla was very young, like maybe not even teenager, 12, 13, maybe 14. I'm not sure, but definitely a minor, and yet they started this relationship. And now I've heard that Elvis and Priscilla didn't do anything. He didn't pursue her while she was underage, but the moment she turned 18 or even 17, I don't know, he started to pursue her. We'll see if that's true or not. I think there's a reason that the Elvis estate does not like this movie and does not want people to see this movie, because it paints Elvis in a bad light. But it feels deserved too, just because that relationship is so gross to think about. But I think this is going to provide a lot of good character, like introspections between this, going into Priscilla and what she went through, and even Elvis and the kind of person he was, because we know him as this amazing singer, this amazing performer, even, who defied laws, was like a great advocate. But let's see him in his home life and see how that was. Maybe there at times he was a good husband to Priscilla, but maybe at others he was a little controlling, like we kind of get a glimpse of in the trailer with the wigs that Priscilla was putting on. Which, by the way, that that hair is so huge. It is ginormous, and I know like it is true to what she looked like and the appearance she actually had. But it's like, man, that is so big. Um, it just poof. Anyway, sidetrack. I just thought that was a little amusing to see. But yeah, that comes out November 3rd. Very much looking forward to that. That's going to be very interesting. All right, let's get into some of the main topics today. If you listened to last week's episode, you'll know that I talked about The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. That was a Wes Anderson short on Netflix based on a short story by Roald Dahl. And I loved it. It was so good. And since then, Netflix released 3 more Wes Anderson shorts, each about 17 minutes. So if you put them all together, it would be about an hour and a half, including Henry Sugar. And so these short films are The Swan, The Ratcatcher, and Poison. Each of them, like Henry Sugar, are based on Roald Dahl short stories. And man, they are just so good. Wes Anderson really knows how to adapt these short stories where you basically get the story read to you line by line. I haven't like gone in to look at the stories, but it feels like they are just reciting the book to you, and it also feels like a stage production. It's like Wes Anderson is in his theater era, and I'm here for it with this and Asteroid City and French Dispatch, I believe. I haven't seen that one, but it does still have that aesthetic too. But these 3 short films, not only are they just clever and charming and witty, but they also give really good morals. Like The Swan, about like bullying and how bad it is, but also like your wits and how you can use that to your advantage and to just never give up. The Ratcatcher and Poison, the lessons are more downtrodden in a way, with the Ratcatcher, the lesson not really being like anything positive, but just a real world lesson of people will only care about you when they need you, and then once you're not needed, you'll be an outcast. But it also shows that you shouldn't do that to people, that people are here for a reason, and you should embrace all of them. And Poison, which I think was my favorite out of these 3, maybe The Swan. Ratcatcher I'm a little lower on, but even then, I still think it's great. But The Swan and Poison, though, those were both so great. And Poison, one of the lessons were that you need to be grateful, especially to those who offer help to you, because it's just not nice to not be grateful. But yeah, and the cast is so like tight knit. It is Ralph Fiennes, Rupert Friend, Dev Patel, and Benedict Cumberbatch, and along with some uncredited stagehands in the short films, those are the only people in it, and they play multiple roles. It is so charming. I don't want to say more about any of them because they're on Netflix. They're so short. Just give them a watch. They are so well worth it. All right, let's get into the main topics of today's show. We got two movies for you, two very different films. And the one I want to start out with is The Creator. So this is a big sci-fi epic kind of film. It is directed by Gareth Edwards. It stars John David Washington, Gemma Chan, a few others. I'm blanking on all their names. And surprisingly enough, because it is this big sci-fi movie, and it's an original movie too, which we don't really get nowadays. So that's very exciting. The budget of this movie, it has big effects. It's about robots, which I'll get into later. So like big bombastic effects. The budget was $80 million. And it looked amazing. Like that is one of the shining things about this movie, is just how well it looked and how convincing it all looks. And yet they do it on such, I mean, 80 million is not a low budget, but compared to like Avatar or any other movie that's out today, it is astoundingly low. And it's like, man, if you want to do something, do it like this. Make it smaller, make it more compact, but like tell a good story with it, and you'll have the effects there to carry it with it. So speaking of story, what is it? It is a classic humans versus robots. There's not a robot uprising, but humans have developed AI to basically act like their own humans, to have like feelings, basically Blade Runner-esque. And an event goes down where in Los Angeles a nuke is detonated by the AI, by the robots. And because of that, America goes at war with the robots. They ban them completely. They think they're done with them. But other countries say, well, they're not being bad to us, so we're going to keep them. We're going to keep manufacturing them. We're going to keep using them as our house servants, our police force, just whatever we need them for. And so now they are at war, and they make it like explicitly to say, we are not at war with the other countries, we are at war with the robots. And it's specifically like Asian countries. And John David Washington plays a man who was deep undercover with on the AI side. Well, he was on America's side, but he was undercover in the AI like battlefield. And he found love there, and with his wife, who was the daughter of the mastermind behind all of this. But while he was doing this, he fell in love with her. She got pregnant with their child, and she dies because of America, and an American ship blows her up. So then we go years later. He is a dejected man, and the military comes back and recruits him for one final mission, because there's a chance that his wife, even though we saw her blow up, there's a chance she might be alive. And so John David Washington, being the romantic he is, says, I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna save her. I'm gonna find her. She is definitely alive. I'm going to find her. What do you need me to do? I'll do anything. And they say, all right, the AIs, they have a super weapon. You need to take it down. So John David Washington says, all right, I'll take it down. I'll destroy this weapon. Turns out the weapon is this little girl. And John David Washington, he plays Joshua. I'll just call him Joshua from now on. Joshua, instead of killing this robot, but that is practically a little girl, he takes her under his wing, and he decides to defect from the army and try to find a way to keep her alive. So that's all I'll say about that. Ken Watanabe is also in it. Very small role, but very good role. So yeah, I don't want to say like too much else about it. I feel like I already said too much, but I cannot get my hair right. Oh well. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a video. You've seen me mess with my hair this entire episode. Oh well. So I want to go into the good about this movie first. Uh, Gareth Edwards is a great director. He knows how to direct action and to deal with these big effects heavy movies. He did Rogue One, if that tells you anything. I think he did Godzilla. I think that was him. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, and one of the great things about this movie is not only that, but the way he builds this world, because it could just feel like a copy of Blade Runner. And in many ways, it feels like it does want to be this generation's Blade Runner. But the way they build the world, it's clearly different, and they have all their own sets of rules and values, and how they feel towards the robots and how the robots feel towards them. And it is very interesting. The very beginning gives you like an exposition dump of the last 50 years, so the audience gets caught up because it is a lot to know going in. But even the small things, like in the film, as Joshua's going about his daily life, and he just does things that are normal to him but feel foreign to us, and it just feels really interesting. It feels like this is a real lived-in world that we are taking a peek in, and I really like that about this movie. The performances are also very good, especially with Joshua and Alfie. The little girl who plays Alfie, she doesn't have a whole lot to do in the movie in terms of her character. She's kind of one note for most of it, but she still does a good job doing that, and it is for a reason. And then even later on, when she starts to develop a little more, she really brings it, and she is just like very cute on screen. Like, you can tell that this girl is just having the time of her life being in this film. Um, Let me look. Yeah. So overall, I did like it. I this film is very hard to talk about just because it is so good. Like, there is so much potential there. But one of its biggest weaknesses is how strong it is, because it reaches like 75% of what it's trying to do, but then it doesn't fully grasp its full potential. And so with that, it was kind of disappointing for me. Um I wanted this, and I know like I'm talking about expectations versus reality, and I'm trying not to delve into that because I'm trying to just judge it based on what this movie is. But this movie pitches itself as this big sci-fi movie that is focused on these characters and has a story to tell. But then, especially in the third act, it kind of foregoes a lot of that character development, or just the characters overall. Not all of it, but most of it, in favor of this big action set piece where we gotta go big because this is what the audience wants, and it's not what we want, or it's not what I want. I wanted them to just focus on this guy who lost everything and this little girl who gives him a reason to live again, basically. Because that is such a. It is interesting. It's been done before, especially with The Last of Us and a lot of other things, of this sad dad who meets another kid and adopts them. So it has been done before. And just like The Last of Us, it's like an escort mission, sort of. But I wanted more development, especially between their relationship, because you know that they are going to form a relationship and they are going to learn to love each other. And at some point, it just happens, and I wanted more of the in between of them being strangers to not liking each other, to warming up to each other, to being a family. And it seemed like we went to 0 to 100, where they were strangers and then family. I wanted a little more of that in between, so it just felt more realistic and natural. The villains in this movie, which are the humans, they are very underdeveloped. They have a reason to hate the robots in this film. The robots nuked Los Angeles. They believe that if this super weapon gets out and the robots are able to use it, that all of humankind will go extinct. They firmly believe that. And so it could be this very interesting philosophical discussion of, is this another phase of just evolution and we just need to let it happen? Or do we have to stop it? Do we have to rage against the machine? Quite literally. And they kind of touch on it here and there in the film, especially with like the thought of evolution, with these AIs being the next stage of evolution. But they don't go farther with it. They just kind of mention it. And the humans, instead of having this like discussion with themselves and with Joshua, they're just clear cut bad guys. And it's not like, oh, I'm bad because I have this mission. It's, I'm bad because I want to be bad. I like being bad. And that's just not very interesting, especially in this day and age when we have so many complex villains. The humans could have been more complex and just been given a lot more depth. And so yeah, that was very disappointing. And the story, it starts out very strong and it just wavers by the end. Overall, I did really like this film. I do think it's definitely worth watching, especially with it being an original film. Please go out and support it because it's definitely worth the watch, especially on a big screen. I saw this in a Dolby theater. I want to go see it in IMAX. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get to see it in IMAX, but either way, it is a great experience. You'll laugh. You'll have a good time. There are a few good jokes here and there, even though it is more of a self-serious movie. Yeah, overall, this is a very good movie. I don't want to say great. It's very good. Please go watch it. Support it. Show the studios that we want more original films. How would I rate this? I would probably give this maybe like a 77 out of 100. I think it's still very good. It just is lacking in a few key aspects that keep it from becoming great. But it's right there. It is so close. I hope that this is more of a one and done kind of film. If there was like a spin-off sort of thing, I'd be fine with it. I would love, like, honestly, a series of maybe a prequel, like going into the war of between what happened, or just something along those lines that is like very short, not necessarily another big movie, but just something like that. So yeah, those are my thoughts on The Creator. Have you seen it? What do you think about it? Are you going to watch it? Are you just never gonna watch it based on what I said? I don't know. Let me know in the comments on YouTube. That's a wrap at NCR. If you're wondering. So my next movie is a horror movie. Let's get into some spooky vibes. It's October. It's time to get into some Halloween type vibes. And that's Saw X. Now, at the time of this recording, I just got out of watching Saw X. I'm recording this on Wednesday, and I saw a noon showing, and it is right now 4 p.m. And so I just left the theater about an hour and a half ago, maybe 2 hours ago. So my thoughts are fresh on this. But are they fresh or are they rotten? Let's find out. So this is the 10th chapter in the Saw franchise. I have not seen all of them. In preparation, I watched the first two. I found out that this takes place in between 1 and 2. So I figured I'm fine. I don't need to sit down to watch the rest. There will be slight spoilers for the second movie, as far as I know, because they do like give away some things in this, but it's also the 10th chapter. And if you don't know by now, whatever. So yeah, if you don't want to know anything about any of these movies, I guess click away until you watch them and then come back. Listen to my thoughts. But until then, I'm just gonna get into this movie, and I won't spoil this movie at all. So if you're not aware of the Saw franchise, it's about this dude who is dying of cancer, and he is this maniac serial killer who captures his victims and makes them play a game to achieve salvation because they all have these different vices, and he crafts these like traps around their vices, and they have to maim themselves or disfigure themselves in some way in order to escape. And it's very odd. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially with the villain, I guess the protagonist in this. His name's John Kramer. He's like, I'm giving you salvation. I'm giving you a chance to live again. And he doesn't think he's a killer. He's like, I've never murdered anyone in my life, because the the victims start the contraption, but it's also like, but what if they never move and they just die? That's still kind of on you, man. You crafted these traps, and even if you're not murdering them, you are scarring them for life. You're giving them a lot of trauma. But anyway, this movie, John Kramer, it's after the first Saw. He just got done with the bathroom trap. He's feeling good about himself, but his body isn't. His cancer is really hurting him. And so he goes to Mexico to undergo this experimental procedure. And it turns out, hey, everything worked. The cancer's gone. But then it's not. It's not gone. What happened? He got grifted. All those doctors he talked to, those medical professionals, even the people who he met along the way, were all part of this big elaborate scheme to con him, and I think they said like 30 other people out of their money by pretending to be doctors and pretending to fix their cancers, but then leaving them to die. So so then John decides to get revenge and put them all in his death traps. And that's one of the good things about this movie, because in the first and second one, a lot of the people, they just didn't deserve what they got to them. Like, one of them, he like was going to cheat on his wife in the very first one, but then he didn't. But he still had to saw his foot off. And it's like, man, like, you're not the best person, but you don't deserve this. But then you get these people who are like, no, you are not only conning these people out of their money, but leading them to believe that they are going to live when in fact they're not, like essentially killing them in a way. I guess in the same way Jigsaw is killing people, only his is more direct. So that's one of the good things about this movie. One of the interesting things about this movie, which I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but it is very interesting, is that the first half of this movie features almost no like saw traps or horror things whatsoever. It's like it's focused on John and him trying to find a way to cure his cancer, and it's brain cancer too. How you gonna cure that? But he tries to find a way nonetheless. But it becomes a sort of medical drama, which is very interesting. Which I didn't think I was going to say about a Saw film, but here I am. But yeah, it's very focused on John Kramer and Tobin Bell's performance, and his performance is not bad. It's a pretty good performance. There's some wonky lines here and there, wonky like line deliveries even, but that's what you're going to get with these types of movies. Very low budget, don't get the best actors out there, but yeah, so the first half, it's just a lot of setup before we get into the crux of the story. And that is saw traps, people dying. So like I said, I haven't seen all these movies, so I don't know like how creative they all get. I've only seen the bathroom trap in the first one and whatever other traps were in there, and then the main like trap house in the second one where they were just in house. So the traps in this movie were pretty, I don't want to say interesting. They were messed up for sure. But they were entertaining. I'm just gonna say this movie is dumb. This movie is so stupid, but it wears it like a badge of honor. They're like, yeah, I know I'm stupid. What are you gonna do about it? And parts of the ways that it's stupid, it's how these traps are laid out. the traps are so unfair in some ways because it's like you have to saw off a part of your leg and do this one thing, and the person does it, but they're like, hey, you did it, but the thing that you need to do, that contraption is just moving a little too slow. It's not even on you. It's on this machine that I made, so you still have to die. And so those things, and it happens twice, which I didn't like that like repetition of like, all right, you're doing this exact same thing again, but whatever. It's very stupid. Like whether it's some of the lines, some of the performances, but the traps themselves, and just especially the last half hour, it is so dumb, and I was laughing so much. And you'd think that that would be a bad thing because this is a movie that wants to be like serious about itself. This wants to scare you. It doesn't want to make you laugh. But I think it does kind of want to make you laugh. I think it wants you to look at the dark humor of the situation. Like there's one point where if you've seen the movie, someone needs a rope. And they get it in a very creative way. And I was laughing so hard, and it was messed up, but it was entertaining. And it was stupid, but I was here for it. I was having the time of my life watching this theater alone in a small theater, watching this movie rather in a small theater. And yeah, it made me kind of feel for John just a little bit at the beginning because he really thought he was going to cure his brain cancer, which he thought was uncurable before. And then he finds out he didn't, and it's like, oh man, but then you realize he's a pretty bad dude. And then they try to give him like a character moment near the end, but it's also right after someone died. And so it's like someone's dead, and then John's like, I'm sad. And they want you to feel bad for him. But it's like, you just killed that person. That person just died. They're lying on the floor right now. Like, dead, twitching. And it's like, you can't have both. You gotta choose one. Well, like, at least have that moment come later or before in the film. Let me go into my least favorite part of this movie. Because I've talked about the traps, and they are engaging, but let's talk about Amanda. And man, the first Saw came out about 20 years ago, 19, I believe. And this is a direct continuation from Saw 1. And so is John Kramer and Amanda. And Amanda is John's like apprentice who was in the first one and was in the second one. And she was like 20 in that, and John was like 60, and this is 20 years later. Tobin Bell is obviously 20 years older, but it kind of fits still because he looks similar to what he did, because once you reach a certain age, you like stop maturing as much. But Amanda, she is now like probably in her 40s, still trying to play a 20-year-old, and they do not try whatsoever to make her look young. For one, they just put a black wig on her and they call it a day. And a choker, my bad. A choker and a black wig, and that's it. They say, all right, we did our job. Good job, team. And you can clearly tell she's 40, not only in how she looks, but how she acts. Her performance in this is so weird. She is in a completely different movie. Like I said before, this movie kind of makes you kind of want to laugh. But she is going so over the top. In my notes, I said she gives Jesse Pinkman vibes because she is that like apprentice to the older, more wise dude. At one point, she says Jesse's signature catchphrase, and I laugh so hard because I already had the comparison in my head. But like she is trying way too hard in this movie, and she is like super not out of nowhere, but just out of this world, like bananas. And her performance in this is so weird, it's so eccentric, and it's so different from John's like quiet, reserved performance that it feels so weird. There's a very big dichotomy that is not good between these two performances, and something had to be done. I don't know if that's how Amanda acts in the later movies, because I know she's in more of them. That's not how she acted in the second one. So what happened? Because this is before the second one. But it's like, man, you gotta tone it down a bit, because she is going for it. And I mean, good for you, just going for it. But she goes a little too far, in my opinion. So, yeah, I had a good time with it. One of the other things I wanted to bring up was the sound mixing and the editing. Occasionally it can be a little wonky, it can be a little weird, but for the most part, it works really well, and especially in service of the terror and the intensity of all of this. Especially like the editing, it'll like pulse a bit if a character does something to themselves to like try to get out of the trap, and it not only it builds the tension, but it makes you feel what they're feeling in a way. In the sound mixing, you like feel the gore and like the bones cracking. It's gross, but it also fits. It works well. By the way, there's so much blood, there's so much gore in this. When you compare it to the very first one, it is like almost laughably different, because that had such a low budget. And I don't know what the budget for this is, but they at least put it to good use. And it's obviously higher. It's probably like $3 million higher, because that first movie was like $400,000 or something. But yeah, so it's very gory, it's very messed up. I didn't look away during any of it, but I wanted to for some of it. Some of it, like I said, had that like dark humor aspect, but a lot of it was just like very intense, very disturbing, which it's what you want out of these movies. So it's a good thing. It was used effectively. And yeah, I surprisingly had a pretty good time with this movie. I would probably watch it again. It was very entertaining, especially that last hour and a half. And the twist at the end is so stupid. Especially because it is very convoluted. I won't say what it is, but all these movies have like this big twist, and I know they have this motif of this running music that comes in when the twist happens. And when it hits, it's like, man, this should not have happened, because it is so convoluted. So many things had to go right in order for this to happen. And John was just like, yep, I knew that was going to happen. John also jumps to a lot of conclusions in this, and he's always right. So that's a little weird. That's like writing and stuff. But that twist is so just out of nowhere. And it's like, I knew this was where they were teeing up, but it's also like, man, you really planned this, and things went precisely to plan. But yeah, overall, it was enjoyable. It wasn't the best thing ever. I'd probably give it like a 63, maybe, out of 100, maybe 65. I'll give it a 65. Yeah, a good old 65. But yeah, have you seen Saw X? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. That'll do it for this episode of That's a Wrap. If you've enjoyed listening, feel free to listen to any of mine and Austin's past videos. They are all on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. And especially on YouTube, you get video format. You can leave a comment. You can leave a like. You can share it to people. Do whatever you want with it. It's yours now. So yeah, thank you for listening. Next week, I will be reviewing either The Exorcist, Believer, or Dumb Money, whichever one I get to first. We'll see. I don't have a lot of high hopes for Exorcist. It doesn't look that good to me. But Dumb Money is something I've been really looking forward to. But it did come out this week, and I like being current with it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what I do. You can follow me at That's a Wrap NCR on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. But that'll do it. But until next time, that's a wrap.